Hello. In this video, I will do some intake and output calculating intake and output. So before you start this lecture, right, there are some key notes. So one note is when doing these problems, make sure you add up all forms of intake. So go ahead and write that in your notes. And also, when you are recording an output, you want to make sure all the forms of output. For example, urine output, chest tube drainage, and wound drainage. And also note, ice chips records as half a volume. Okay, I think we're only going to do one example in this video because it's pretty straightforward. So on example one, we have at 8:00 breakfast, we have 8 ounces of coffee and 4 ounces of juice. And for lunch at 1200, we have 6 ounces of milk, 16 ounces of water, and 2 cups of ice chips. And for dinner, uh, we have 12 ounces of diet soda. And we have an IV fluid of 75 milliliters per hour. Okay, so we got to calculate the intake and output. So the first thing I'm going to calculate is my urine output. So yes, so what would be my urine output? At 0800, it would be 700 milliliters. Oh, this I think this is sorry, this is still part of the problem. Um, yeah, at 0800, there are 700 milliliters, and then at 11 o'clock or 1100, not 11 o'clock, there is 300 milliliters. And then at 1300 o'clock, there was 300 milliliters. Yeah, I apologize. This is all part of the problem it was given. At 700 1700, there is 450 milliliters, and at 2000 o'clock, there is 420 milliliters. And then at 2300 o'clock, there's 500 milliliters. So this is all given. I didn't write this down because, yeah. So, yeah, urine output, uh, 0800, 700 milliliters, 1100 o'clock, 1100, 300 milliliters, and then 1300, there's 300 milliliters. At 1700, there's 450 milliliters. At 2000, there's 420 milliliters. And then at 2300 o'clock, there's 500 milliliters. Um, Also, this is also given, because I didn't write this down. The chest drainage. This is given. Chest drainage, let's see, at 0800, there's 550 milliliters. At 1300, there's 30 milliliters. And then 1800, there is 10 milliliters. And this was also given wound drainage at 0800, there is 200 milliliters. And at 2000, there's 100 milliliters. Okay, so this is all given. So let me um let me start the problem again. So at 0800 breakfast, there is an 8 ounces of fluid and 4 ounces of juice. So that's liquid. And then at 1200 o'clock at lunch, there's 6 ounces of milk and 16 ounces of water, and then 2 cups of ice chips. And then at 1800 o'clock for dinner, there's 12 ounces of fluid. So this is all fluids, right? And then you also have an IV fluid at 75 milliliters per hour. And this is also given urine output. At 800, there is 700 milliliters. And then at 1100 o'clock, there's 300 milliliters. And then at 1300 o'clock, there's 300 milliliters. 1700 o'clock, there's 450 milliliters. And 2000 o'clock, there's 420 milliliters. And then at 2300 o'clock, there's 500 milliliters. Okay, so that was all urine output. And then for chest drainage, um, at 800, there's 50 milliliters. At 1300, there's 30 milliliters. And then 1800, there's 10 milliliters. And then you have the wound drainage of at 800 o'clock, there's 200 milliliters. And then at 2000, there's 100 milliliters. Okay, so what we got to do is we want to find the total intake, right? And then we got to find out the output total. So what we got to do is find the total intake and then output to find the fluid balance. Okay. So first, what I'm going to do is calculate the oral. So all the fluids, all the liquids, right? So first, I'm going to calculate the oral. So that's how much he intaked, how much liquids he took. Not he or she. It's I don't even know if it's he or she. But if you recall, for breakfast he had 8 ounces of coffee, so that's a liquid. And then what else? And then he had 4 ounces of juice for, right? So this was all for breakfast. And then at 1200 o'clock at lunch, he had or this patient had 6 ounces of milk. And then what else? 16 ounces of water, and then 2 cups of ice chips. So remember, we said ice chips records as half a volume. So 2 cups of ice chips is technically one half volume. So that would be plus 8. So this would be plus 8 because that's one half of a volume. So 2 cups of ice chips is half a volume. And then lastly, the diet for dinner, he had a diet 12 ounce of diet soda. Okay, so add up all the liquids this patient t took. So 8 plus 4 plus 6 plus 16 plus 8 plus 12 turns out to be 54 ounces. And then we want our we want our units to be in fluid. Yes, we want it to be in milliliters, not ounces. So this is where you need your conversion. So we're going to put ounce on the bottom because we want to get rid of the ounce, and we're going to put milliliters on top. So based on your conversion sheet, what is the relationship between milliliters and ounces? Well, for uh, I believe for 1 ounce there is 30 milliliters. Okay, so that's something you must know. And then as you can see, the ounce disappears and you're left with meters. And then if you multiply across, because it is a fraction, 54 times 30 over 1 gives me a total of 1620 milliliters. Okay, now let's calc. The patient was also said he had an IV fluid of 75 milliliters per hour. So somehow we got to convert that into milliliters because we want it in milliliters, right? We want all fluids. So an IV fluid of 75 milliliters per hour. That was all given. Now, how are we going to convert that to milliliters? Well, we know that in 24 hours or in 1 day, there's 24 hours. As you can see, the hours disappear. So you're left with 75 times 24 over 1, which is 1800 milliliters. So your total intake, so from the oral intake was 1620 milliliters. And then from the IV fluid, it turned into 1800 milliliters. So your total is 1620 plus 1800 is 3420 milliliters. Okay. Now let's talk about the output. So we had an output of urine, chest, and wound, right? So output. So for urine, um, one was 700 milliliters at 1100 clock, 300 milliliters, 1300. It's all right there in the problem, so just add them up. So 700 milliliters plus 300 milliliters plus 300 milliliters plus 450 milliliters plus 420 milliliters plus 500 milliliters. So when you add them all up, you get 2670 milliliters. Okay. Now what about the chest output? One was 50 milliliters plus 30 milliliters plus 10 milliliters. And if you add them up, 50 plus 30 is 90 milliliters. And then finally the wound. So this is all under output. It was 200 milliliters plus 100 milliliters, total of 300 milliliters. So your total output, if you add them up, 2670 plus 90 plus 300 should give you a total of 3060 milliliters. Okay, so now we got to do is find the fluid balance, which is basically intake minus output. Our intake was that's all the liquids he into that's all the liquid that patient intake, uh, which was 3,420 milliliters. And then output is how much liquids came out, which was 3060 milliliters. And when you put it all together, you get 360 milliliters. I am going to stop here. So this was a small taste of calculating intake and output.